I seen her give Slim the eye. Slim's a jerkline Skinner, hell of a nice fella. Slim don't need to wear no high-heeled boots on a grain team. I seen her give Slim the eye. Curly never seen it. And I seen her give Carlson the eye. George pretended a lack of interest. Looks like we was gonna have fun. The swamper stood up from his box. Know what I think? George did not answer. Well, I think Curly's married a tart. Now that's like not a nice word for a woman. He ain't the first, said George. There's plenty done that. The old man moved toward the door, and his ancient dog lifted his head and peered about, and then got painfully to his feet to follow. Poor dog. I gotta be setting out the wash basins for the guys. The teams will be in before long. You guys gonna buck barley? Yeah. You won't tell Curly I said nothing? Hell no. Well, you look here over, mister. You see if she ain't a tart. He stepped out the door and into the brilliant sunshine. George laid down his cards thoughtfully, turned his pile of threes. He built 4 clubs on his ace pile. The sun square was on the floor now, and the flies whipped through it like sparks. A sound of jingling harness and the croak of heavy-laden axles sounded from outside. From a distance came a clear call, "Stable Buck, oh, Stable Buck." And then, where the hell is that goddamn Stable Buck? George stared at his solitaire lay, and then he flounced the cards together and turned around to Lenny. Lenny was lying down on the bunk watching him. Look, Lenny, this here ain't no setup. I'm scared. You gonna have trouble with that Curly guy. I seen that kind before. He was kind of feeling you out. He figures he's got you scared and he ain't gonna take a sock at you the first chance he gets. Lenny's eyes were frightened. I don't want no trouble, he said plaintively. Don't let him sock me, George. George got up and went over to Lenny's bunk and sat down on it. I hate that kind of bastard, he said. I seen plenty of 'em. Like the old guy says, Curly don't take no chances. He always wins. He thought for a moment. If he tangles with you, Lenny, we're going to get the can. Don't make no mistake about that. He's the boss's son. Look, Lenny, you try to keep away from him, will you? Don't never speak to him. If he comes in here, you move clear to the other side of the room. Will you do that, Lenny? I don't want no trouble, Lenny mourned. I never done nothing to him. Well, that won't do you no good if Curly wants to plug himself up for a fighter. Just don't have nothing to do with him, will you remember? Sure, George. I ain't gonna say a word. The sound of the approaching grain teams was louder, thud of big hooves on hard ground, a drag of brakes, the jingle of trace chains. Men were calling back and forth from the teams. George, sitting on the bunk beside Lenny, frowned as he thought. Lenny asked timidly, You ain't mad, George? I ain't mad at you. I'm mad at this here Curly bastard. I hoped he was going to get a little stake together, maybe $100. His tone grew decisive. You keep away from Curly, Lenny. Sure I will, George. I won't say a word. Don't let him pull you in, but if the son of a bitch socks you, let him have it. Let him have what, George? Never mind. I'll tell you when. I hate that kind of a guy. Look, Lenny, if you get in any kind of trouble, you remember what I told you to do. Now, in Chapter 1, they've got this backup plan. If anything goes wrong, Lenny is to go immediately to the spot in the woods where they were camping out in Chapter 1. If I get in any trouble, you ain't gonna let me tend the rabbits. That's not what I meant. You remember where we slept last night, down by the river? Yeah, I remember. Oh, sure, I remember. I go there and hide in the brush. Hide till I come for you. Don't let nobody see you. Hide in the brush by the river. Say that over. Hide in the brush by the river. Down in the brush by the river. If you get in trouble. If I get in trouble. A brake screeched outside. A call came. Stable Buck. Oh, Stable Buck. George said, Say it over to yourself, Lenny, so you won't forget. Both men glanced up for the rectangle of sunshine in the doorway. It was cut off. A girl was standing there looking in. She had full rouged lips, that means red lipstick, and wide-spaced eyes, heavily made up. Her fingernails were red. Her hair hung in little rolled clusters like sausages. She wore a cotton house dress and red mules, on the insteps of which were little bouquets of red ostrich feathers. I'm looking for Curly, she said. Her voice had a nasal, brittle quality. So this must be Curly's wife. George looked away from her and then back. He was in here a minute ago, but he went. Oh. She put her hands behind her back and leaned against the door frame so that her body was thrown forward. You the new fellas that just come in, ain't you? Yeah. Lenny's eyes moved down over her body, and though she did not seem to be looking at Lenny, she bridled a little. She looked at her fingernails. Sometimes Curly's in here, she explained. George said brusquely, Well, he ain't now. If he ain't, I guess I better go look someplace else, she said playfully. So there's some details, some clues in her description and her behavior that are characterizing her as flirtatious. Lenny watched her fascinated. George said, if I see him, I'll pass the word you was looking for him. She smiled archly and twisted her body. Nobody can't blame a person for looking, she said. Now, of course, that's a double entendre. That's a double meaning. She's looking for Curly, but she's also looking at the other men. Excuse me. Ooh, really damn it. That's what we want to do. The elbow. Oh, I'm going to watch this later. Lenny watched her fascinated. Already read that. Slim's voice came through the door. Hi, good looking. I'm trying to find Curly, Slim. So Slim is another character who we're going to characterize here. Well, you ain't trying very hard. I see him going in your house. She was suddenly apprehensive. Bye, boys, she called into the bunkhouse, and she hurried away. George looked around at Lenny. Jesus, what a tramp, he said. So that's what Curly picks for a wife. She's purty, said Lenny defensively. Yeah, and she sure ain't hiding it. Curly got his work ahead of him, but she'd clear out for $20. Lenny still stared at the doorway where she had been. Gosh, she was purty. He smiled admiringly. George looked quickly down at him, and then he took him by the ear and shook him. Listen to me, you crazy bastard, he said fiercely. Don't you ever take a look at that bitch. I don't care what she says and what she does. I seen him poisoned before, but I never seen no piece of jailbait worse than her. You leave her be. Lenny tried to disengage his ear. I never done nothing, George. No, you never, but when she was standing in the doorway showing her legs, you wasn't looking the other way, neither. I never meant no harm, George. Honestly, I never. Well, you keep away from her, 'cause she's a rat trap if I ever seen one. You let Curly take the rap. He let himself in for it, glove full of Vaseline, George said disgustedly. And I bet he's eating raw eggs and right into the patent medicine houses. Lenny cried out suddenly. I don't like this place, George. This ain't no good place. I want to get out of here. So, there's a lot of dangers. The boss is already suspicious. Curly hates and wants to pick a fight with Lenny. And Curly's wife is being really flirtatious here. Like I said again, it's kind of sexist to create the only female character in the novel as being someone who's just there to like seduce and get men in trouble. We would want to create more authentic and personable, humanistic female characters in a modern text. We gotta keep it till we get a steak. We can't help it, Lenny. We'll get out just as soon as we can. I don't like it no better than you do. He went back to the table and set out a new solitaire hand. No, I don't like it, he said. For 2 bits, I'd shove out of here. If we can just get a few dollars in the poke, we'll shove off and go up to American River and pan gold. We can make maybe a couple dollars a day there, and we might hit a pocket. Lenny leaned eagerly toward him. Let's go, George. Let's get out of here. It's mean here. Heavy foreshadowing that something bad is going to happen, which it will. We gotta stay, George said shortly. Shut up now. These guys are coming in. From the washroom nearby came the sound of running water and rattling basins. George studied the cards. Maybe we ought to wash up, he said, but we ain't done nothing to get dirty. A tall man stood in the doorway. He held a crushed Stetson hat under his arm while he combed his long, black, damp hair straight back. Like the others, he wore blue jeans and a short denim jacket. When he finished combing his hair, he moved into the room and moved with a majesty only achieved by royalty and master craftsmen. He was a jerkline skinner, the prince of the ranch, capable of driving 10, 16, even 20 mules with a single line to the leaders. He was capable of killing a fly on the wheeler's butt with a bullwhip without touching the mule. There was a gravity in his manner and a quiet so profound that all talk stopped when he spoke. His authority was so great that his word was taken by any subject, be it politics or love. This was Slim, the jerkline skinner. His hatchet face was ageless. He might have been 35 or 50. His ear heard more than was said to him, and his slow speech had overtones not of thought, but of understanding beyond thought. His hands, large and lean, were as delicate in their action as those of a temple dancer. So here we're characterizing Slim as almost like a king or like a prince. He's like royalty. The men really respect him. This is for a lot of reasons. One, he doesn't talk too much. He listens. And when he does talk, he says things with such profound authority that others respect his opinions. Two, he His job is to drive the mules on the wagon or like the plow, which is working the fields, so or collecting the grain. This is a highly skilled job, and typically in society, we pay more respect to people with a highly skilled job, and his capabilities are being exaggerated as he can manipulate a whip so accurately. The whip, of course, being a strand of leather that you would use to sort of give a little bit of pain to the mules to drive him forward. He can hit a fly with that. He smoothed out his crushed hat, creased it in the middle, and put it on. He looked kindly at the two in the bunkhouse. It's brighter than a bitch outside, he said gently. Guess he doesn't have sunglasses. Can't hardly see nothing in here. You the new guys? Just come, said George. Gonna buck barley? That's what the boss says. Slim sat down on a box across the table from George. He studied the solitaire hand and was upside down to him. Hope you get on my team, he said. His voice was very gentle. I got a pair of punks on my team that don't know a barley bag from a blue ball. You guys ever bucked any barley? Hell yes, said George. I ain't nothing to scream about, but that big bastard there can put up more grain alone than most pears can. Lenny, who had been following the conversation back and forth with his eyes, smiled complacently at the compliment. Slim looked approvingly at George for having given the compliment. He leaned over the table and snapped the corner of a loose card. You guys travel around together? His tone was friendly. Invited confidence without demanding it. Slim is kind of the opposite of Curly. Sure, said George. We kind of look after each other. He indicated Lenny with his thumb. He ain't bright. He a hell of a good worker, though. Hell of a nice fella, but he ain't bright. I knew him for a long time. Almost done with the chapter. Slim looked through George and beyond him. Ain't many guys travel around together, he mused. I don't know why. Maybe everybody in the whole damn world is scared of each other. It's a lot nicer to go around with a guy you know, said George. A powerful, big-stomached man came into the bunkhouse. His head still dripped water from the scrubbing and dousing. Hi, Slim, he said, and stopped and stared at George and Lenny. These guys just come in, said Slim by way of introduction. Glad to meet you, the big man said. My name's Carlson. I'm George Milton. Here's Lenny Small. Glad to meet you, Carlson said again. He ain't very small. Now, of course, Lenny's last name is Small. He's really big and strong. We've got that ironic name, symbolic. He chuckled softly at this joke. Ain't small at all, he replied. Meant to ask you, Slim. How's your dog? I seen she wasn't under your wagon this morning. She slang her pups last night, said Slim. 9 of them. I drowned 4 of them right off. She couldn't feed that many. Got 5, huh? Yeah, I kept 5. Kept the biggest. What kind of dogs you think they're going to be? I don't know, said Slim. Some kind of shepherds, I guess. That's the most kind of seen around here when she was in heat, Carlson went on. Got 5 pups, huh? Gonna keep all of them? I don't know. Have to keep them a while so they can drink Lula's milk. Remember that George earlier promised maybe he could get Lenny a pup. Carlson said thoughtfully, well, look here, Slim. I've been thinking. That dog of Candy's is so goddamn old, he can't hardly walk. Stinks like hell, too. Every time he comes into the bunkhouse, I can smell him from 2 or 3 days. Why don't you get Candy to shoot his old dog and give him one of the pups to raise up? Candy is the old swamper. Candy is the man without the hand, with the old dog. Sorry. And he's suggesting that they euthanize Candy's dog and give him a new one. George had been staring intently at Slim. Suddenly a triangle began to ring outside. Ding, 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 slowly at first, and then faster, faster, until the beat of it disappeared into one ringing sound. It stopped as suddenly as it started. There she goes, said Carlson. Outside there was a burst of voices as a group of men went by. It's dinner time, basically. Slim stood up slowly, with dignity. You guys better come on while there's still something to eat. Won't be nothing left in a couple minutes. Carlson stepped back and let Slim precede him, and then the two of them went out the door. Lenny was watching George excitedly. George rumpled the cards into a messy pile. Yeah, George said. I heard him, Lenny. I'll ask him. A brown and white one, Lenny cried excitedly. Come on, let's get dinner. I don't know whether he got a brown and a white one. So Lenny wants one of those puppies. Lenny didn't move from the bunk. You ask him right away, George, so he won't kill none of them. Sure, come on now. Get up on your feet. Lenny rolled off his bunk and stood up, and the two of them started for the door. Just as they reached it, Curly bounced in. You seen a girl around here? He demanded angrily. George said coldly, about half an hour ago, maybe. Well, what the hell was she doing? George stood still, watching the angry little man. He said insultingly, "She said she was looking for you." Curly seemed really to see George for the first time. His eyes flashed over George, took in his height, measured his reach, looked at his trim middle. "Well, which way'd she go?" he demanded at last. "I don't know," said George. "I didn't watch her go." Curly scowled at him, turning, hurried out the door. George said, "You know, Lenny, I'm scared. I'm going to tangle with that bastard myself. I hate his guts. Jesus Christ, come on. There won't be a damn thing left to eat." They went out the door. The sunshine lay in a thin line under the window. From a distance, there could be heard a rattle of dishes. After a moment, the ancient dog walked lamely in through the open door. He gazed about with mild, half-blind eyes. He sniffed and then lay down and put his head between his paws. Curly popped into the doorway again, stood looking in the room. The dog raised his head, but when Curly jerked out, the grizzled head sank back to the floor again. Whew! All right, there's chapter 2. Thanks for sticking around for the 50 odd minutes of the video. I hope this was a helpful guided reading. I'm going to do this for the remainder of the chapters. You can use them to accompany future chapter questions. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck, and let me know if you have any questions or comments. Bye, guys.